and I'm excited first to welcome my co-host, Sherry from Storehouse Media Group. And I know you're excited about our guest.
Caroline Alexander. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, Caroline is a New York Times bestselling author. You're a filmmaker, and you've got a new book coming out on May 14th called Skies of Thunder, right?
I do indeed. This is a book that is about one of the least known theaters and operations of World War II. And yet it is an amazing epic story. It is about the, hold your breath, it will sound very dry at first, the air supply of China during World War II. This was when China had been blockaded by the invading Japanese, and the only way to get materiel and supplies to free China at that time turned out to be by air. And the only problem with that is that the planners in Washington had overlooked the fact that the foothills of the Himalayas lay between northeast India, where the planes would take off from, and southwest China, where they had to deliver the supplies. And this was in an era of very pioneering, still very raw aviation discovery. So, for example, it wasn't even known there was a jet stream. All of that lay ahead, and these young pilots were tasked with flying untested aircraft through what turned out to be the worst weather system in the world over the foothills of the Himalayas.
So let's kind of, how did you come up with this idea to write this book?
Well, I stumbled on it. I mean, almost literally. I was on an assignment for National Geographic magazine in 2010 for a story about tigers. And one of the places I was going to for that was northern Myanmar, known as Burma during the era we're talking about, the World War II campaigns. And this is a very, very wild part of the world, a magnificent part of the world. Very few people go in, fantastic jungle, mountain-ringed valleys, just extraordinary. And it's today one of the largest it is the largest tiger reserve on Earth. But I was struck while I was there that some of the Naga people's huts and little villages, these are the people, indigenous people who live in that part of the world, had these very strange jagged metal fences all around their vegetable plots. And I commented on them, and I was told that they had been cut from the fuselages of the US crashed cargo planes buried in the jungle. And that captured my attention. And when I came back, I found that there were an estimated nearly 600 still undiscovered downed cargo planes forming what was called the aluminum trail that shadowed the flight route of these transports from the era. And that image of the jungle and mountains kind of claiming this whole fleet of aircraft just continued to haunt me. And I just kept kind of digging into it here and there. And then I felt, this is a story, I need to write it.
Yeah, I was going through it, and it's a story of courage, and you had talked about that, and doing this in your investigation, you were unearthing some obscure memoirs and long ignored records, including the miraculous stories of those who survived. And I'm thinking to myself as a writer, like, oh my goodness, what was going through your head when you were discovering all this and reading through all of this information from the past?
One of the things, you'll appreciate this, that makes a writer catch on fire is not just the idea, the concept, or the subject, but when you start seeing the material that you can get your hands into, the voices that you're going to be able to tap into to tell the story for you. And that was very much part of what excited me, is that there were memoirs of pilots, there were memoirs of pilots who bailed out, thousands bailed out. Their engines would fail in these untested C-46s and iced up in these terrible weather conditions. And it was absolutely common to sort of bail out over the Burmese jungle. And then once they're in the jungle, if they, survived that, they then had to get out. And some of these treks out are real stories of survival in and of themselves. So you're right, it's a tale of double courage. It's a tale of the courage required to fly this extremely hazardous route. Many of the men tasked to do it were very young pilots. They weren't even, in some cases, they had only 25 hours of instrument training, which is just like raw amateur. And yet they were thrown into these conditions. So a lot of courage just to do it. And then more courage with the whole decision, do I bail out? You bail out, and then you have to survive the jungle or the mountains and a whole long trek back to safety.
I mean,
Wow.
I just couldn't imagine.
I mean, and lot of once an idea comes, it comes on, and then you start writing, right? And that's what your success as a writer is to go and do it and develop it. Were you most surprised about after starting to continue that research all the way to writing the book? You uncovered some things you never even thought, even from being horrified by, you talked about, I'm going to search into this, and then you found other things too, I'm sure.
Well, I'd say first of all, I've never been more surprised by what I call the big picture. And what I mean by that is my ignorance about the whole theater, this China, Burma, India theater, or CBI theater, was profound. And I like history, and I am interested in World War II. And I was sort of staggered that I knew, and embarrassed that I knew almost nothing about it. So I can say one of the exciting things was that everything was a discovery for me. The other thing, a sort of darker discovery, was the extent to which the American effort to aid China had been the result of a very concerted propaganda campaign. There was a very strong pro-Chinese lobby, largely led in great part by Henry Luce, the media titan who controlled Time Life and also March of Time, which in those days was, great source of the American public's knowledge of news. And he was the child of American missionaries to China. And he literally believed it was America's God-given destiny to be partners with this country that he imagined would become a Christian democratic nation to be a partner with the US. And so all the stories that came out to the public were very carefully curated to imply that Chiang Kai-shek was, fighting the Japanese and so on and so forth.
Wow. I mean, it's quite very, very interesting. And it's something that I did not know. And Sherry, I'm sure you didn't before.
I didn't.
It's crazy.
I never heard of the hump, which is now called the aluminum trail, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I've never heard of that in the history. And you mentioned Churchill, and I'm thinking, there had to be you're an award-winning historian, but I'm going like, wow, there has to be a lot you needed to know, not just about military, but about aviation. Was that a lot that you had to dig into? Did you have any information going into it to make this accurate?
That's a very astute question. I had the benefit, I think two benefits. One, I actually am afraid of flying. And I think that helped channel the kind of sense of awe for what the pilots went through. But my partner is a former Navy combat pilot who flew low-level reconnaissance over North Vietnam. And his reward for surviving is he's built his own small jet prop plane. And I fly in the right seat of that with him, which means as passenger, not doing anything. But I am up front, at least watching how things work and controls work. And I can say that my fear of flying has lessened, but my sense of awe at the multitude of skills that are required to be a true world-class pilot is enhanced. I mean, you have to know about weather. You have to have a real head for maps and directions and just a feel for your aircraft. It isn't just getting in like behind a car and so forth. Multi-dimensional, skill sets. And so that helped guide me in terms of the terminology and the mechanics and the feet. And also I had sounding board to say, you know, how difficult was this really? Is this a tall tale that somebody's told and doesn't make sense? You know, you want to fact check, even pilots' reminiscences can sometimes get exaggerated, and you need to kind of fact check that. So I had a very good sounding board in-house. And but you're right, there was a sort of multitude of avenues of the story that, you know, I had to get under my belt.
A lot of
Yeah, I
people do
learned
not.
new stuff.
I was going to say a lot of people don't know about the other allies the United States had during the war. People don't speak about other countries. They speak of Great Britain, but they don't really speak of anyone else. Isn't that true?
It is true. And, you know, we forget a global war, a world war was a global war. And one also appreciates, I mean, in the players in this particular theater, the Chinese Burma India theater, first of all, the initials CBI, which were used to refer to the theater, were used by the airmen to stand for confusion beyond imagination, because they said it was so many allies and so many different voices. But so you had the British in India, you had the American interest in China and nationalist China that was very much unstable and Japanese occupied and not wholly at all controlled by Chiang Kai-shek. So even a multitude of players there. And then you had India itself, as well as the British in India. And then you had in between these Burma, or Myanmar as it is today, that had been occupied by the Japanese, and then later in the war, towards the end of the war, flipped their allegiance to the Allies. And all of these had competing interests, and the Indian Army under British sort of leadership in Burma is one of the great stories also of this theater that is covered by my book.
All right, best place people can go. I know they can get it at independent bookstores. They can get it available on Amazon, all over different places. But is there a place we can check you out as well to purchase the book?
I'm embarrassed to say I'm quite old-fashioned. Best place is probably on my publisher's website, which is Viking Penguin. And obviously Amazon has information, but I don't have a website of my own.
Oh, yeah, you know, you're a famous, great writer, so you don't need it, right? They just Google you, right?
Well, you probably need everything, but maybe I'll get there, but not quite yet. But thank you for asking.
All right, thanks again for stopping by. I appreciate it.
It was such an
Thank
honor. Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
Greg Hanna. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing amazing, amazing week, amazing guests. All excited, Neil.
Oh, it's an exciting way to start May with Linda McMahon. I don't need to really give an introduction. I think everyone knows this household name, but she again was in Trump's administration, also former president of WWE or CEO of WWE, everything. Linda, thanks for stopping by. And it's been a whirlwind, isn't it? Hasn't it? It just continues to just go. And with the whole ride to get Trump reelected, it's been a busy time for you, hasn't it?
It really is a busy time. And I've been busy and I hope to stay busy. Being busy is a good thing. I like it.
See, that's what America needs. America needs to see that busyness is a good thing, and to have a purpose and a mission for your life is important. And if they don't have it, Linda, they can't go anywhere in life, right?
Oh, that's absolutely true. One of my favorite quotes is, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy woman to do it. And Lucille Ball is it's attributed to her, but it's also attributed to a couple of other people. But I like the attribution to her.
Oh, that's amazing. I love Lucille. That was one of my favorite shows to watch as a kid.
Absolutely.
So, Linda, what made you want to be a politician?
I never thought about being in politics. I had a great career at WWE. And then there just, came a time, it was like 2009, and Chris Dodd was the senator in the state of Connecticut, and he wasn't all that popular at the time. He had left the state, moved his family out, and he seemed to have more emphasis on running for president. And I really felt that I'd had a wonderful career, and it was time to give back. I'd actually started, to digress for a second, I'd started the year before on the State Board of Education. The governor appointed me to that position to fulfill the term of someone who had left, and my interest in education she knew about, very well. And so that was kind of my first foray into politics a little bit. And then when Chris Dodd's numbers weren't all that great, I said, you know what? I said, we have the kind of, constitution that allows for its citizens to, if they meet certain criteria, to run. And I decided to run for the U.S. Senate right out of the box, not quite as bold as Donald Trump, who ran for president right out of the box. I did run for the U.S. Senate, and I just wanted to, I thought that it was a time that we really should have more business people in Washington. We have plenty of lawyers, but I just thought it was time to have, more business people, and I thought that my experience could lend itself well in Washington, and I could give back to the community and give back to my state and to my country.
Fantastic.
And I think it's so important to look at specifically people that are politicians, that they've had to run something once in their lives, right? Because there's so many decisions that a politician has to make that you had to make in the WWE with a global organization that you're with, and all the different logistics and everything that a CEO has to do, that is really equates to what a politician has to do in so many ways.
Well, in so many ways, especially, I think especially if you're a cabinet head, and I was, incredibly grateful and honored that President Trump asked me to head the Small Business Administration. And it was interesting when he gave me a call, and he said, when he was the president-elect, he called, he said, can you come down and meet me at Trump Tower? I want to talk to you about something. Now, I'd known President Trump at that time for about 25, 27 years. We had done some business together before. And when I came down, he said, I have a novel idea. And I said, what's that? He said, I want somebody to head up the Small Business Administration that's actually run a business and started it and knows what it's about and can appreciate small businesses on the ground. And he said, I'd like for you to consider doing that. And it probably took about a nanosecond to say yes, because I was incredibly flattered, and I said, and honored, to be asked to serve in the cabinet. And I think it's one of the, one of the best things I've done, and I really enjoy being there and doing that.
Well, Linda, I would love your thoughts, given what you just mentioned about the Small Business Administration, on Biden's anti-worker economy and the effect that it's having on small businesses.
Well, I can tell you that, it sort of goes into his whole Bidenomics, which he doesn't even use that word anymore because he knows what a failure it's been. But he really has no appreciation, I don't think, for small businesses and the American worker. Small businesses need less taxes, not more taxes. They need fewer regulations, not more regulations. They need greater access to capital, not high interest rates that are preventing them from getting that access to capital. And even from the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, small business optimism is declining. They don't know where they're going to be. The worst thing in the world for businesses, not knowing what's coming down the pike. So President Biden has already said that he's going to allow the Trump tax cuts to expire, and he's actually also going to increase taxes. So small businesses don't know where they're going to be, and that's really tough. And the other thing that that we did, I thought, really well under the Trump administration was the workforce initiative that we had. Companies all over the country came to Washington. We convened them. We talked about apprentice programs, and they were really unbelievably pleased to be included, these businesses to be included in this whole program, and how to really grow their apprenticeship program. And they each pledged a certain amount of new jobs or new people into the workforce that they would create. They actually signed a pledge. Governors, heads of businesses signed these pledges, all over the country. And I think in the 5-year period, we were scheduled to introduce about 16 million more workers into the marketplace. So President Biden didn't continue with that program. And not only that, he adjusted, or if you will, tweaked the apprenticeship program. We had 800 pages of new rules. And what this apprenticeship program did was, instead of allowing a company to train apprentices at the rate in which they needed them and the rate at which the apprentices could actually take on that responsibility, put in these regulations that there must be 2,000 hours of apprentice work, 144 hours of like in classroom work. And these companies that brought on these apprentices had to treat the apprentices like employees, pay them benefits, pay them the same salary as those people who are already skilled in their job. So it's just a killer for the apprenticeship programs, just an absolute killer. And those are the things that I just think the Biden administration just doesn't understand, about the workforce and about what companies need. The whole thing about apprentice programs should be to grow the skill level or reskill workers for the jobs that their employer needs. And boy, he just kind of shot that in the foot.
Being the administrator for the Small Business Association, you look at all that, you look at small businesses in general. What did you learn most being in the Trump administration about small businesses that you didn't know before?
Well, having built a business myself from the ground up, I think I had a great appreciation for what a lot of these small businesses were going through. What I counseled them on when I would actually talk to entrepreneurs, and let me just back up for a second. While I was at SBA, I went to every district office around the country. There's 68 of them in all 50 states. No other administrator has ever done that. And I visited not only the SBA office, but then I went out into the community and toured small businesses, talked to them about the tax cuts, regulatory reform, and met with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of young business people just starting out. And the one bit of advice they would ask me, if you had one bit of advice for me as I'm starting up my new business, what would it be? And I said, do not be undercapitalized. I said, that is the thing that kills so many small businesses. You have a great idea, you get started, and suddenly you're using your credit cards, you're borrowing from Uncle Paul, and you're doing all of these other things that you need to do just to stay afloat. You're not going to grow. You're not going to be able to be innovative. So don't go in undercapitalized, and have a business plan. Know exactly where you're going, what you need to do. And I said, and I can tell you that from the standpoint that I once went bankrupt. I know what it's like to lose everything and then have to come back from that. I said, so let me counsel you not to be undercapitalized. And so I learned a lot of businesses really didn't have that. They could start, but they didn't have that next bit of capital, to grow.
That's really great point. I started my business when I was 22 and I had no capitalization, and I did go to my Uncle Paul and he said no, but I made it happen anyway.
Well, it can still happen. And clearly that there are probably more success stories just from grit and cutting corners and doing all those things.
Yep.
But you might have been able to grow a little bit faster if you had a little bit more capital. But I think that is that is still the advice that I give, to try not to be undercapitalized. Of course, if you don't have a good business plan when you start, you really don't know you're going to be undercapitalized.
No, that's right. No, I 100% agree with you. I wish I had thought about taking that out, but I almost put it on myself as almost like a challenge. You're going to make this happen from zero with like no lines of credit and no loans and no this and no that. And I did, but it was slow. Yeah.
Yep. And that's, you hear so many of those stories, and that's the American dream.
Cash flow is king. I find that out. They don't teach that in school, especially if you didn't go for business. Like, how many people that are entrepreneurs in business never went for business at all, in school, you know what I mean? And they don't tell you, by the way, when you start growing, you start making money, you might run out of money still. They don't get that. So I think that's what the Biden administration is not seeing, is that we need cash flow. We need more loans. We don't want to continue to be living off of our profits to put back into our business. I do this all the time. It stinks. And I wish I could go out and get the right loans, but the way that the rates are, the way it looks, it's not even worth it. And it's a shame.
No, you're right. And that's one of the things that's happening now is this credit crunch with the high interest rates. We're seeing, slowing in the housing markets. We're seeing slowing, across the board with these high interest rates. And it really stifles business growth.
Yeah. No, I was so fortunate. I bought my current house 2019 under President Trump, 3.1%, 30-year fixed. Amazing. It's like 6 something now. I was looking at a line of credit to expand some things we're working on at the company. Traditional loans, conventional, they want almost 12%. SBA was a little better at 9.25 minus my quarter point for being a veteran. So 9%, not bad. A lot better, more favorable than the bank directly, but 100% with what you're saying. And boy, the hundreds of thousands of dollars we have to send to the IRS. I think of all the guys I could hire and the gals and give them a shot. You know, it's very frustrating.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that President Biden is overlooking is the expiration of these tax cuts that were under Trump. One especially that has actually already started expiring in 23, I think finishes up in 24. And that is the being able to write off the capital investment for that small business owner in the year in which it was made, write it fully off that year. And there was a baker just outside Boston, and I toured his plant, and he had these big commercial ovens. He told me, he said, this tax cut is going to allow me to buy a new oven that is $1 million. This oven's $1 million. But I already have business lined up that I can plug in and I can grow. And I already have the space allocated in my plant for this, but I would have to wait a couple of years, but I can do it this year because of the tax write-off.
Fantastic.
And so not only did that get his business, did grow quicker, but look at what it did for the economy. He hired more people. He had more revenue coming in, and therefore he was paying more taxes. When you make more revenue, you pay more taxes, and it's just lost on this administration that taxing and regulation kills business. It's just unbelievable.
The other thing that's really hard during this Bidenomics situation is the workers that don't want to work anymore. At the restaurants, they can't find bus people, they can't find waiters and staff and so on because people wanted to stay home and get their 2 or 3K a month and not work.
When you're being paid to stay home, it's a pretty good incentive to stay home. And then what's happened to fill a bit of this void is, unfortunately, we have so many of the illegal aliens who've come across the border who are now filling a lot of these jobs at lower prices. So that for those who do want to work is helping to reduce the workforce as well. And so it's just poor business. Quite frankly, it's just poor business.
And that's the problem. And then in part of your process, what you're doing now to help President Trump be reelected is multiple things. We're not just small business. You're involved in a lot of other topics why to reelect President Trump, right? You're on the ground in more ways than just small business now, especially with your experience you got to try to reelect President Trump in 2020.
Well, I'm now the chair of the America First Policy Institute. Now that is a 501c3, so that's not campaign. So I'm not working, with President Trump as part of his campaign. But what the America First Policy Institute is doing is we are helping to continue a lot of the policies that he had when he was in office, like lower taxes, like regulatory reform, strong international policy, and good healthcare policies, just great energy policies. I mean, let's drill, baby, drill. Let's make sure that we utilize the resources that we have here in our country. So at America First Policy Institute, we absolutely are developing and writing the policies that will continue for the next administration, not only on the federal level, but on the state and local level, trying to making sure that the messaging is correct and making sure that we are doing all the research that we need to do. We're doing all the typical stuff that a think tank must do, but we are clearly a do tank. And we are on the ground for the next election for election integrity, making sure that poll watchers are trained and making sure that the laws of those states that got changed under COVID go back to where they were, and filing suits in places where we need to stop illegal aliens from registering to vote. I mean, the Biden administration actually has ordered that the federal agencies act as voter registration agencies. And the people that are registering, they don't have to prove that they're citizens. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's just constitutionally wrong.
Mm.
And so to make sure that we are on the ground and watching all of these things to ensure our election integrity so that we can make it easier to vote but hard to cheat.
Yeah. Do you think with all the scrutiny that's been going on since 2020 and so on, do you think that there's even a chance that they could do whatever they did in 2020 to make this happen again in 2024?
I think they're definitely going to try, and the mechanics on the ground are what are so important. In early voting, AFPI is a strong proponent of early voting, of ballot harvesting, where it is proper to do that. But Republicans can't sit back and say, no, we're going to vote just on election day. We can't do that anymore. So as soon as the states have the ability, or they've changed their own laws to say, okay, early voting starts now. And in some states, it starts as early as September.
Wow.
So, you really have to have your game face on and have all the training done and everything before September, and to make sure that the voter registration rolls are cleaned from the Secretary of State's office in all these states. So that dead people can't vote. And we have found that they have. I mean, there's just a lot of cleaning up to do. And so that's one of the ways that AFPI is focusing its voter integrity mission, if you will.
Yeah. Last time around, not only was there vote early, there was vote often.
Well, we don't want that.
Nope.
Are you surprised by so many people turning to being now supporting President Trump that did not support him in 2020 because of we see some of the chaos that's going on in our country, but are you surprised some of the people that you might never have thought that would turn to support President Trump that are now?
Well, I've been pleased by it because, at this particular point, we have something that we've not really had before. We actually have the records of two presidents, President Trump for his 4 years, and we've got President Biden for almost his 4 years. And you can compare them side by side. Where was the economy under Trump versus where is it under President Biden? Where was the security of our borders? Where was security not only nationally, but abroad? Where was the economy? We can look at President Biden's economy. I mean, gas prices are up over 53%.
Mhm.
Groceries, eggs up over 20-some%. It's just amazing to see the increase in prices. And a family today has to have $11,400 more just to have the same standard of living they had when President Biden took office. So it's easy to compare these records. And I think common sense people are looking at the records of these two presidents and saying, my goodness, where do we want to put our money? Who are we going to bet on? And that's why I think you're seeing, in spite of everything that President Trump is going through with all of these, bogus cases that he has to sit through trial on, you're seeing his numbers hold and go up because the country knows who would be the better leader.
Wow. What are like three things that you feel like an entrepreneur, the average person could do, to carry this message into the election and to try to make things better for the American worker and for their small business?
One thing is that I always really ask our voters, be informed, do your research, understand what policies these candidates are putting forward. Because if you just are just listening to mainstream media and not really doing your own diligence and research, you're just really not going to know what these candidates stand for and what they're going to be doing. And I really stress that. And in your own community, go out and work in your own community. Make sure your neighbors are voting. Tell them, when does early voting start? It starts now. Get these people to the polls. Let's not to the polls, but let's make it's early voting is by mail. So mostly by mail, and make sure that that it's being done, correctly and properly. And let's make sure that we're registering new voters. We have a lot of people that are moving in and out of states. We have young people who are becoming of age to vote. Let's make sure they're informed. All of these things are so, so important.
Very good. Now, Greg, you have your question you ask all our celebrity guests. Go with the question.
I do.
One
But
more.
right before
One
I do
more.
that, one more quick one. What are your thoughts on, revaluing the currency in the US and other parts of the world, having some type of a reset, eliminating some debt, everybody getting back on a gold standard who isn't now at this point, or some kind of asset back, getting rid of the fiat dollar, that whole scenario. Do you have any thoughts around that at all?
Yeah, I'm going to leave that to the economist to figure
Okay.
out.
Fantastic. Okay, great. So here's my last question. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Linda. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the time. It's phenomenal. Tell me, what's the most important thing in life you feel you've ever learned?
The most important thing in life I've ever learned. I think it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how you get back up. And I just think that's so important. Expect in life to get knocked down. And if you go through the school of hard knocks, you learn an awful lot each and every time, but it's just so important how you get back up with new knowledge, with new vigor, with new determination. And so don't let getting knocked down bother you. Just jump back up and go for it again.
And
Fantastic.
Linda, I know that's fantastic. And Linda, I know that you're not just involved in the nonprofit, you're doing some speaking too for women, right? All over the country, right? You're doing a lot of that too.
Yeah, I am. I really enjoy going around to different parts of the country, talking about women's empowerment issues. As a matter of fact, this past weekend, I was out in Seattle, Washington for the Global Beauty Awards, which is the pageant industry. And it's really, the pageant industry is so much more than what you would just look at on the surface. And it really is empowering women and training women to how to present themselves and how to negotiate and how to have their own self-confidence. And so I was very pleased to be out there to speak on women empowerment. And so that was kind of a different thing, that I do. But I am doing lots of podcasts, like I am doing this today. A lot of Zoom calls, a lot of interviews about the economy, about small businesses, about what we're doing at AFPI. And so doing those all around the country as well to inform people. We're a great resource to go to AmericaFirstPolicy.com and look at all of the centers that we are dealing with, from energy to American prosperity to the American worker. There are 22 centers, and we have 9 former cabinet members that are chairing those centers, and then we have some of the top minds in the country helping to continue to write this policy. So it's all of the above and what we're doing to make sure that our country is growing, that we have businesses that can be innovative, that our economy is on the right track, and that we have safety here and abroad.
It's fantastic. Last thing I wanted to tell you, Linda, is I'm making a comeback into professional wrestling. I wrestled back in the 90s in the minor leagues for Bert Prentice, for Jerry Lawler, and all these different people. I'm a legitimate 6'10", and I'm making a comeback. Yeah, I'm making a comeback into professional wrestling to just the unfinished business, getting a documentary done and all that stuff. So I just want to let you know that. Because so I ran into a lot of the guys that end up working for WWE after, when they were over with Bert and Lawler and USWA and all that stuff. So I just wanted to kind of say, wow, it's such an amazing thing that you were able to do with the WWE. And I see wrestling as life in so many ways. If you can learn the wrestling business, you can learn life in so many ways.
Well, good luck to you. I wish you the best of luck.
All right. Thanks, Linda. Appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing amazing. We had a great day today, on location and out of the studio, but excited to live stream and meet our amazing guest.
Yes. Lisa Welchell's joining us. And you know what, Lisa, facts of life and much, much more. And we're going to learn about your story and your latest show hosting. And Lisa, you have not aged a bit in how many years? What do you have, the fountain of youth? I was talking to my colleague off air, and he said she's still hot. So
thank you.
So
your colleague, thank you.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. Shout out to Aaron Lester. But kind of another one of our syndicators. Lisa, you must take care of yourself in that way to live this, or you love the life you live. I think that might be it. I think that people don't age as
That
much that
and the fact that I come from good genes. My mom looks young.
there you go. Then you knew you were set. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, Greg, go with your first question for Lisa.
Thanks. Hey, Lisa. So tell me, how did you get the opportunity to get the role on Facts of Life?
Well, I auditioned, and but the little nugget of trivia there is I auditioned at the same time for a show that was on the air called Hello, Larry. It was McLean Stevenson and Kim Richards, and there was an older sister. And in the second, I guess they had the first season, the second season, the older sister had I think some drug problems. So they recast the role of the older sister, and I got that role. At the same time, I got the role of Blair. But Facts of Life was just a pilot. The other was a definite deal for at least another year of work. But I was really such a newbie in the business. I didn't know the difference. I just thought, well, Blair, the character of Blair just seems so much more fun. I'd rather have that one. So I took that. It's great because that turned, Hello, Larry, I think was canceled after the second year.
Yeah.
So you made the right choice,
I
and
made the right choice in my naivete.
And did you ever think that, Facts of Life, when you first started the show, it would be still iconic today, so many years later?
Definitely not. Again, I was 16. I mean,
Wow.
I'm still a teenager at that point. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I wasn't one of these kids that, lived for show business. I loved it. And I had done it since I was a little kid and had been on Mickey Mouse Club at 12. But it wasn't like I was plotting this major career. So it was all just it just happened. And I got to go along for the ride.
All right.
That's wild. So do you have like one or more, or what's your best memory that you have from being on Facts of Life?
Wow, gosh. I don't know that there's one best memory. I just think that they gave us a lot of freedom to be kids and to play and to have fun because we were also very professional and we got the job done. So I would say just overall, it was fun to come to work. And I loved the character. But we also just cut up and played. And then of course, hey, who can beat it when somebody as handsome as George Clooney comes on and joins the cast? It's a good reason to get up and go to work every day.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And I watched the documentary on Facts of Life and kind of the behind the scenes and all the different things. But there's so many topics that were covered on the show that really were game changers, a change of everything. Wouldn't you agree that conversations that were never put on television before, that I think that
yes.
makes it so iconic that
It was
people
classic Norman Lear for
Yes.
sure. Really, and I wouldn't even say that he was shaping the culture. I think he was reflecting where the culture really was and was going in a way that, I think that we were able to then see it on screen and in many cases, and hopefully embrace the evolution of where we were as America the world really, but mostly America.
Well, come on, it came on everywhere. I'm sure worldwide, when you travel anywhere in the
true.
world, they see you. I mean, it's so funny. Like before I got to interview some of these famous people on shows I would watch when I was a professional wrestler and I was enlisting in French and Spanish. And I'm like, and then, oh, wow, shows that we always watch, like The Nanny. Then I had Fran Drescher on, and go figure, I would have thought I'd ever get to interview her when I was a professional wrestler. But those kind of things is that worldwide, you're iconic. I'm sure you go anywhere and you're recognized, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I remember meeting an author that I really loved her book. Her name was Anita Murjani, and she wrote a book called Dying to Be Me. And I was interviewing her for something else. And she said that she grew up in Japan, but she came from, I think she came from a Hindu family, but she learned to speak English watching Facts of Life.
Wow.
Wow. How did the experiences on Facts of Life shape your personal and professional development?
That's a good question. My personal development has always been very, very separate from my work. So I don't know that it really, obviously it shaped it because it was such an impactful, situation in my life. But really, for me, it was a job I went to, and then I came home and it was separate. I never really brought my work home with me.
And that's big, right? To not bring your work home with you and to be able to separate the two. And I think that's why, and you look at your career after Facts of Life, you were able to, have a semblance of a real life at times, right? Because you were able to not, take the whole Hollywood persona. You didn't even, you were naive when you got the job, and you really didn't change as a person based on how you were raised. Would you agree?
Well, and also, we finished the Facts of Life in March of '88. I was 24, got married in '89, then had a child in '90, and another child in '91, and another child in '92. And so I really went from a full-time job as an actress to a full-time job as a mom, and both were great. So it wasn't like I felt like I was missing anything, because I had this other wonderful life that was being born.
Literally.
Exactly.
So after that break, when you were off having children and enjoying life and so on, what inspired you to return back to TV and jump onto Survivor?
Well, Survivor, it wasn't a return to TV for me. It was just the fact that I love the show. I had watched it since its inception, and I love games. I love strategy. I just love the social, psychological aspect of it. And I was a fan of the show and wanted to be on the show as a contestant. And it had nothing to do with the fact that it was on television. I wanted to be a part of it. And it just happened to be that because it was such a successful season and I made it all the way to the end, that it did open some doors for me to kind of get back into show business. But that wasn't the goal.
But it ended up changing it, right?
Yeah.
You went back right to entertainment from that. So is Survivor kind of the back end entertainment, even though you didn't plan on it, to get the other opportunities of reality shows and then more reunions of the Facts of Life, and now what you're doing now?
Well, there hasn't been any reunions of Facts of Life since Survivor. So after Survivor, the very first thing that happened, I guess, Tyler Perry's a big Survivor fan. So he reached out to me right after I finished the episode and said, "Hey, I'm doing a movie, a Medea movie. I got a role for you. Do you want to be in it?" Yeah, sure. And then Hallmark Channel called and had a couple of movies for me. And so it really just kind of, oh, okay, yeah, great. I guess I'm back in this, which was great.
Wow.
Especially when they're all coming to you, right,
Mhm.
Greg? Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's amazing. So let's just take a quick shift to your spiritual journey, and how has that influenced your choices for your career and advocacy work now?
Well, it influenced them in one way back in the day, in that I just so grateful for my upbringing as a Christian, and really the kind of the guidelines that I lived within. I believe that is what kept me sane and not off the deep end, which it happens to so many of us child stars. And so it impacted my roles and whatever I would take or not take, and it impacted my ability kind of to stay grounded. I would say in the last 10 or so years that my own belief system has changed, significantly. I've actually just written a book that'll be out in a couple, probably 18 months or so, called Don't Throw the Baby Jesus Out with the Bathwater. And it's about my own journey of, I would no longer identify as a Christian, but I would absolutely identify as a Christ follower. And sadly, those aren't always the same thing.
How would you say they're different? And then we'll get to your show. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Jesus, for one thing, he was kind of all about the poor and the immigrant and the and the sick, and and I would say that a large faction of Christians right now really I wouldn't say they follow that aspect of Jesus's teachings of reaching out and looking out for the more marginalized and the more on the outskirts or the rejected, which Jesus was all about that.
Interesting. Go ahead, Greg.
So, yeah, if we just talk about your charitable and social initiatives, what are some of the causes that you're most passionate about right now?
I would say I'm very passionate about mental health. I do, I'm so happy to see that that so many people are coming forward and just destigmatizing it. I think I have been impacted by it peripherally, and the fact that more and more people are able to say, hey, this is, if you had, if you had diabetes, you would take some insulin shots. So if there's something off in your brain chemistry, there's some medication for it. And so I really am so happy to hear that is something that is being talked about. I'm married to a psychologist, so probably no surprise there as well, that's something that I believe that there's physical sickness, and then there's also heart and mental wounds that need to be addressed as well.
Now let's talk about being a host, right? I mean,
Okay.
you're the perfect candidate, right? Like just how you're able to present yourself, even from the days when you were 16. So let's talk about Collector's Call and what you do as host of it.
I love this job so much because I'm so curious about people. I love stories, passionate people. You could just spend all day listening to them because it just overflows. And so these collectors, I travel the country and we find people who have amazing collections. And we show the whole collection, but we highlight 6 or 7 of their items so that we can really hear their stories. How did you find these? What started this collection? 99% of the time, it's something in childhood that they're wanting to hold on to, whether it's a feeling or a relationship or just a time of life. And then we bring an expert in, they appraise the items. At the end, they offer a trade for an item that they know the collector wants, but they have to give up an item, which these collectors, there's so much heart attached to what they're collecting. It's really difficult for them to give up. So I love it for the people. I also love what I learned. It's what we've got a great episode coming up Sunday night. It's Star Wars collector. I mean, this guy has almost everything with Star. He's got the Death Star. I mean,
Oh,
he
man.
had it in house, truly, because it was used like a smaller model. He's got Princess Leia's metal bikini and Han Solo's jacket. He's got pieces of C-3PO. He has just everything. And so, I mean, that's really, really fun. The next week we have a Survivor collection. And that's really, of course, I love that. But I also love, like, we've got a collector, we had a collector last week that was science fiction and horror toys. Well, I'm not a big science fiction and horror fan, but those are the episodes where I get to learn a lot. I get to, and their excitement is contagious. And so it's a win-win for me. And I think for the viewers as well.
Fans are what keeps the business going. It keeps people to do things. You need fans or you don't have whatever, you're not making money and you're not having people, it's crickets in so many ways, and collectors. And that's the part of a brand, right? Star Wars. Think about it, how iconic and all those different things. Are you a Star Wars fan? So do you show excitement in the collection and all that? Are you a fan of it?
Yeah, I am. I absolutely am. I show definitely it's all genuine excitement. But even in collections that it's not something I'm not I've never been a huge rock and roll fan, but we've done Kiss and Queen and gosh, we've got one. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. We got a great, what's that band that was out of Seattle, a grunge band? Name the
I can't. I would say Stone Temple Pilots, but it's not that.
No, it's not. It's not. It might be Nirvana.
Nirvana. Okay.
Maybe.
See,
but anyway,
I'm a rock and roll.
Again, I'm not familiar with them, but I tell you what, I came to really appreciate them through the collection.
You can see I'm more of the Star Wars fan than music, even though I love music. I don't have like collections and all that stuff. Go ahead, Greg. You have your final question.
Are you saying you don't have your vinyl and your turntable out?
No, but you do, Greg, right? You have a vinyl collection. Do you?
Yeah, I do. I do have a vinyl collection, but yeah, it's fun.
All right. Okay. So go ahead with your final question you asked all our celebrities.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, Lisa, it's been a real pleasure.
Hi. Thank you for being so flexible with the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was perfect. It was fun, like being in the car coming down and then popping into the studio and then flipping it over. So Zoom has a nice, easy handoff. So that worked
Okay,
out pretty
good.
good. So I always ask all our guests this question because I love to learn and develop myself personally, and I know all the listeners do as well. So I'm excited to get your answer today. Lisa, what would you tell me is the most important thing in life you've ever learned?
I think I will say, I think that the most important thing in life that I'm still learning, and that is, if I truly and genuinely love myself, all of me, things that I would like to change, things that feel messy, things that feel wounded, things that feel like they're not what I would want to be about myself. And yet I just love all of me. The way that a mother loves a child when they're throwing a temper tantrum and they got a snotty nose and got poop all over them. You know, it doesn't matter. The love is for that child. If I can learn to love myself that way, then what happens in life or how other people feel about me or react to me, it won't impact me and throw me off so much because I'm not living for their love. I love myself, and they can have their opinion and their judgments and, you know, perspective all they want. But if I don't take it in and let it, you know, upset me, not that we don't take in because our impact matters, but I'm going to kind of run it by, okay, I'll take that, but it doesn't change how I feel about myself. I love myself, and I'm still learning that one.
That's a hard one, but it's a great one. And this is a great life lesson. Right, Greg?
It really is.
All right. So loving yourself, as Dee Wallace talked about this all the time.
Yeah.
She said about how you got to love yourself first before loving anybody else. And you can't love other people without loving yourself. So Lisa, best place.
We are going to love other people
Go ahead.
absolutely the same way we love ourselves. So if we're judging ourselves, we're going to judge those same things in other people. So it's going to show up.
All right. So we can check out your TV show on MeTV, and we can check that out on any cable channel. And any best place to find info on you. Where can we go?
Yeah, you can just go online, MeTV, and find where where it streams near you. It's on Sunday nights, 6:30, 5:30 Central.
Appreciate it. This is a great time. Thanks again, Lisa.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
great.
You're welcome. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. Guys, take care.